This week on Africa Weekly, we take a look at humanitarian groups struggling to deliver aid to almost 60,000 people in northern Nigeria, forced out of their homes by Boko Haram. We meet African migrants making a home for themselves in the Italian town of Belluno, and finally check in with Liberian designers heading an African-style revolution. But first, a summary of the stories that made the headlines this week. South Sudan has declared famine in parts of the country, with more than 3 years of war leaving nearly 5 million hungry. Aid agencies have said 100,000 people are affected by the famine, which is threatening another 1 million people in the coming months.
I think the main tragedy of the report that has been launched there is that the problem is largely man-made. I think that is really the main tragedy that confronts us now.
The long-term effects of conflict, coupled with high food prices, economic crisis, low agricultural production and depleted livelihood options, are contributing to the situation. The UN's children's charity warned of famine in Somalia, Nigeria and South Sudan as well. Somalia's new president, Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed, sought to downplay soaring expectations of his new administration, warning it would take decades to fix the nation's ills. The president officially took office last week, but his inauguration was held Wednesday in the presence of several regional leaders amidst tight security. A few days before the inauguration of President Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed, at least 14 people were killed when a car packed with explosives blew up near a busy intersection in Mogadishu. The explosion was the first big attack in the Somali capital since his election, although several mortar blasts claimed by al-Shabaab Islamists marked the official handover of power last week. Thousands celebrated Saturday as new Gambian President Adama Barrow retook his oath of office, a month after he was sworn in across the border in neighbouring Senegal during a tense power struggle with former leader Yahya Jammeh. Festivities took place at Independence Stadium in Bakau and were attended by several African heads of state as well as high-ranking diplomats. South African police fired rubber bullets, tear gas and stun grenades to break up violent clashes between local protesters and migrants in Pretoria at an anti-immigration march. Attacks against foreigners in the country have erupted regularly in recent years, fuelled by high unemployment and dire poverty. Schools began to reopen across Guinea after a 3-week strike and violent protests left 7 people dead in the capital. The protests were held in support of a strike by temporary teachers demanding full-time government contracts. Unions finally reached a deal with the government, resulting in students trickling back into the classrooms. Zimbabwe's President Robert Mugabe, the world's oldest national ruler, turned 93 on Tuesday. He's ridiculed regular reports that he's close to death and spoke about creating jobs in Zimbabwe's wrecked economy, the country's extreme cash shortage and his much criticised wife.
Burns to her face and a broken leg. This woman was injured when the Nigerian army launched an attack against Boko Haram. The damage from the fighting is physical, emotional and life-changing. In Dikwa, in the northeast of the country, 200 to 300 people arrive each day, fleeing poverty and insecurity.
Their condition, both hygienically, nutritionally and health-wise, is very poor. But as they come here, we integrate them. We sort of look for their relatives. After we treat them here, we look for their relatives and make sure that they have food supplies, they have medicines.
Over the last 8 years, Boko Haram fighters have devastated the north of Nigeria and the Lake Chad region. More than 20,000 people have been killed and 2.6 million displaced. And as the army retakes territory, the scale of the crisis has become even clearer. UNICEF warns that 450,000 children are suffering from severe malnutrition.
When I was in the village, sometimes we had food, sometimes not. So I came here to the camp because of the lack of food. Thanks to God, the aid agencies help us and give us food to eat.
An improvement maybe, but sanitation, medicine and food are still in short supply.
They need clothes, they need soap to wash. The water, you can see, is long queue. They have only one source of water in this camp.
On top of that, economic activity has been almost wiped out. Traders are monitored by the army and often suspected of collaborating with Islamist insurgents. The UN Security Council plans to visit next month to put the humanitarian crisis in northern Nigeria at the top of the global agenda.
Despite the snow in northeastern Italy, Paul and his friends are hard at work. After risking their lives to cross the Mediterranean, these migrants are cleaning up a site which will be turned into a cultural centre. From sub-Saharan Africa, Bangladesh or Pakistan, they have one thing in common: the good fortune to have been sent to Belluno. This town near Venice has decided to break with traditional migrant reception models and try something different.
I do voluntary work without being paid, but that's because otherwise we'd be at home doing nothing. We have no work, we'd simply eat, sleep, do nothing. So we decided together to help the town so it can move forwards.
This left-wing town at the foot of the Dolomites sits in the middle of anti-immigrant Northern League territory, but it's made migrant reception a priority. Instead of tent camps or centres, asylum seekers live in apartments. The idea is that giving them autonomy is key to speeding up integration, so migrants do their own shopping and cooking.
I don't feel like I'm anti-Trump, no. To put it simply, here in Belluno, we thought that what with the difficulties Italy and Europe are experiencing, we all need to invest a little to resolve a problem that is bigger than us.
It's the first day in the kitchen of this restaurant for Nazrul, who comes from Bangladesh. He's another Belluno volunteer, and he's off to a good start.
He knows how to handle a knife, and that's already something. Sometimes, youngsters struggle even to chop up vegetables.
Take a young person who comes from abroad, who wants and needs to work, who wants to learn. He'll stay for a long time. He doesn't want to leave, and that's good.
The Belluno project may be extended to other towns in Italy. The government is expected to unveil a plan later this month that will focus in part on volunteer projects for migrants.
Jodie Seton finishes a fish fin blouse for one of her customers. The Liberian college graduate runs a fashion store in the capital, Monrovia, offering her customers local rather than Western designs.
We want to represent our continent.
We want to represent our continent, and we want to put our continent on the map. So Liberian women have deemed it necessary to wear their own fashion because it brings out the realness in you, the real African continent, a real African woman pride.
In the past, Liberians adopted the style of the American settlers. But as Liberians in exile returned from neighbouring African countries, many brought with them a taste for traditional West African styles. The switch to African fashion is boosting business in a country that remains one of the poorest in the world.
Right now
I've got 22 people, 15 tailors, then I've got the sales girls. I've got my little brother too, he can sew.
I got my little brother too, he can sew.
Customers say these local clothes are better suited to the extreme humidity and are cheaper than the European designs. But it also comes down to identity.
It's our culture that we dress like this. It shows leadership, and this is why I'm dressing like this. And it tells you that I am from a particular tribe.
We want to get away from this mindset of people wearing other clothes all of the time, especially the Chinese things.
After years of civil war, which forced tens of thousands to flee, Liberia's diaspora has largely returned, bringing with it a taste for African fashion and leading a style revolution.
A proposal by Zambian football authorities to ban discrimination against homosexuals has kicked off a heated debate as homosexuality is illegal in Zambia. The new draft constitution of the Football Association of Zambia contains a clause banning discrimination on the grounds of sexual orientation, in line with regulations from the world governing body. But the country's religious leaders have attacked the proposal. Next week on Africa Weekly, we take a look at the 700-year-old tradition of cockfighting in Madagascar that's more popular than football. That's all from us on Africa Weekly. Until next week.